Hey guys, so here's another batch of games that I played. This is the fourth video in the series, and I'm not feeling too creative about titles, so number 4 it is. Will I number the next ones? I don't know, I haven't thought that far. But anyway, this one's a mix of games again for both PC and console. I hope you all enjoy it. I'll start this off with A Plague's Tale: Innocence. I kinda wish I had made a full video about this game a few months back, but I couldn't fit it into my schedule at the time. I'm just glad that I can talk about it a little now, even though my memory is a little hazy. So the story is about Amicia and Hugo, two noble kids living in 14th century France. They live a pretty safe and comfortable life, at least until the Inquisition barges in looking for Hugo. The siblings end up being on the run, with Amicia acting as her younger brother's protector. They were never actually close to each other before all this happened, which adds to the conflict of the game. What makes things worse is Hugo suffers from an unknown illness, so Amicia has to keep him safe and somehow find a cure in a world that's struck by the plague. Since you play as Amicia, you'll have to guide Hugo throughout their journey. It's a game that relies heavily on stealth, so you'll be sneaking around enemies and distracting them using rocks or her sling. Sometimes you'll even be forced to kill enemies, but it's never the main focus of the game. There's a lot more puzzle solving, with the most interesting ones revolving around rats. Areas in the game are filled with swarms of rats that won't hesitate to devour everyone in its path, so you always need to figure out how to get past them, whether it's warding them away with fire or directing them to another area. What initially drew me to A Plague's Tale: Innocence is its setting. The thought of playing through a game set in such a bleak time in history really interested me, even with the more fictional elements in its story. The game doesn't hold back when it comes to depicting how horrific the plague looked. Piles of corpses were littered in various environments, and many places had little to no living people. But yeah, I really liked the art direction of the game. It was just so dark. Like, there was a lot of gorgeous imagery. Gorgeous in a harrowing way, if that makes sense. It was really immersive. There were a few things that took me out later though in the game. Like, Amicia reminded me of Lara Croft as the game progressed, particularly when she had to kill multiple enemies using her sling. It was kinda strange when things felt like an action game after sneaking around for so long. But I suppose it's her way of evolving to become a better protector for her sake, and Hugo's. But other than that, I really liked seeing how Hugo and Amicia's relationship developed, along with the other people they meet throughout the game. Like, I was more invested in the supporting characters than the main story. All of them were either kids or teenagers, so it was interesting to see where they were coming from and how they end up taking care of each other. It made for a lot of lighthearted moments too, which was a nice break from the more uncomfortable moments in the game. Overall, I thought A Plague's Tale: Innocence was unique and enjoyable throughout its 12-hour playtime. It fell off towards the end for me, but I still think that most of the game was great. Now, on to the next one, a sci-fi game that made me question my existence. The Swapper has been in my Steam library for a while now, so I figured I should finally try it out. I thought that I would end up playing for like an hour or something and then uninstall it, but the opposite happened. So the Swapper starts off with someone in a spacesuit blasting off in an escape pod and landing on an unknown planet. Shortly after, you get to control this person and explore the area. The whole thing feels kinda like a Metroid game, especially when it comes to how its map works. You'll be going from room to room and backtracking to find new places to explore. Sometimes you'll come across logs that give you bits of lore. Other times you get these vague yet spooky messages from space rocks. But I ended up getting really immersed in the game because of how atmospheric it was. At first it gave a horror game feel, but then it felt isolating yet peaceful to play because the art direction, music, and ambience was just brilliant. Now the gameplay revolves around this strange device that your character carries. It basically lets you clone yourself and swap your consciousness back and forth to each body. The mechanics seemed simple enough in the beginning, but the game gets very creative with how you use this device in every puzzle. Since your clone mirrors your actions, you'll be using them to do things like standing on switches, but it won't take long until you start sacrificing hundreds of them just to get to another room. If you think that sounds disturbing, the game gets very philosophical, so the whole swapping bodies and consciousness thing is just the tip of the iceberg. It took me a little over 7 hours to complete the whole thing, and I got so much existential dread, it was amazing. That's all I have to say about the swapper, so let's go to the next title. The third one I've played is Kona, another game that's been in my Steam library for a while now. This one's about a private investigator who's on his way to meet someone in northern Quebec. After a couple of minutes of driving, he gets into a car accident. He wakes up hours later just to find himself stranded in a snowstorm, so he has to survive while continuing his investigation. The game is a walking simulator with bits of survival mechanics to it since it has a semi-open world. For the most part, you'll be driving around in a truck to get to points of interest in the map, but you're free to explore on foot if you want. All you need to do is try not to freeze to death while going from one building to another. You'll have to light stoves and campfires along the way just to catch a break, unless there's a wolf or two around. Other than the survival mechanics, you'll be looking for clues, so you'll find notes around and little puzzles to solve that'll help you in your investigation. There are supernatural elements to the story too, but I feel like it would take away from the mystery if I talked about that now. But yeah, apart from finding notes and having the narrator tell you things, a lot of the story is told through its environments too, though I was more focused on just exploring what the game had to offer. Like, I thought it was a really comfy game overall. There were a few things that I found annoying though, like I backtracked to get items I needed across the map. This wouldn't be as frustrating if it weren't for the loading times while driving. The game has to load when you drive through certain points, so everything stops for a few seconds, and then you get to resume playing. It broke my immersion whenever I was exploring. I also got frustrated later on when I got a snowmobile, because it was really awkward to use, like I couldn't even open the map while driving it, so I had to drive a little, stop, get off, open my map, then get on and drive again. It was a pain to keep track of where I was and where I was going. Combat was another thing that felt really awkward to do, but I'm glad it was only a small part of the game. Maybe if these things were polished a little more, then I wouldn't have felt this frustrated. Anyway, I think I spent more time complaining about that stuff. I just wanted to let that out. I still thought it was a decent experience for a 4 to 5 hour game. The ending was kinda weird though. It shifted genres and it felt a little jarring. But yeah, those were my thoughts on Kona. Time for another story-driven game about siblings, minus the rats and the plague. I've always enjoyed the Life is Strange games, even though they were a little cheesy. I just really liked that feeling of nostalgia every time I played them. Tell Me Why gave me a similar vibe. It's not a Life is Strange game, but it sure felt like it. The game is about Allison and Tyler Ronan, twins who are reunited 10 years after their mother's death. Now, the reason why the twins were separated in the first place is because Tyler killed their mom out of self-defense. After reconnecting with his sister, they both go back to their old house so that they can uncover all the mysteries behind their troubled childhood. The gameplay consists of walking around, examining objects, and solving puzzles. But just like the Life is Strange games, there's a little bit of supernatural stuff going on. Allison and Tyler can talk to each other in their heads and witness memories from their past. So in between the gameplay segments, you'll get prompted to replay a memory. Sometimes you'll even get to choose which sibling remembered one event correctly, since both of them might have seen it differently. Relationships with characters in the story may end in different ways too, depending on what dialogue options you choose in conversations. Tell Me Why is a story-heavy game, so you'll mostly be watching everything unfold. At first I was drawn to the crime drama nature of the game, but I ended up liking the more slow-paced moments. There's so much stunning scenery too, since the game is set in rural Alaska. It's an unfamiliar setting to me, but I loved it because of all the gorgeous shots. As for the twins, I loved playing a part in building their relationship. It felt authentic and really sweet to see them grow and bond. I thought it was interesting to play as Tyler too, since he's a trans man whose identity plays a big part in the main story. His sister, Allison, also deals with struggles of her own later on, specifically when it comes to her mental health. With all the topics that the game deals with, I liked how the game allowed me to be more empathetic towards its characters. Like, it was refreshing to get the option to forgive people that were seemingly hostile, at least after hearing their side of the story. Though I did have some mixed feelings about the game's pacing. It felt like it was bouncing between different genres from time to time. Like the scenes would go from drama, suspense, to slice of life. After completing all 3 episodes, I thought the mystery in the end was underwhelming, but I still think that the game was a decent 10-hour experience. That's all I have to say about Tell Me Why. So yeah, let's go to the next title I played, Human Fall Flat. So I got this game with my friends recently. It got frustrating sometimes, but I had a really fun experience for the most part. Human Fall Flat is a physics-based game that's full of puzzles and platforming. You play as these wobbly human things that you can customize, and you get to use both your arms to climb, grab objects, or annoy other people. But yeah, that's pretty much all you do. It's a very minimalistic game. Every level here has a different environment with a number of puzzles spread throughout the map. I actually liked how unique the puzzles are, because they can usually be solved in more than one way. I think the real challenge is making the physics and controls work for you, because even doing something simple like jumping over platforms will take a bit of time and luck. Now if you're playing with other people, then things might become even trickier. Human Fall Flat can be played solo or with up to 8 players, though I thought it was more chill with less people. Once you get more players into your game, even the smallest tasks become crazier. I don't know how many times my friends and I were just hanging for our lives. Other times we would accidentally push each other off the map. I'm just glad that you can't actually die in the game. You just respawn if you fall into the void. It made it really useful too if someone else solved the puzzle. Everyone else just needed to jump to their death so they would respawn in the nearest checkpoint. So far I've spent 11 hours playing the game across different maps, using both the standard co-op mode and Steam's remote play. I don't think the game stands out too much as a solo experience, but it's definitely memorable as a multiplayer game. The Steam community seems to be pretty big too, so there's a ton of maps and models to download, apart from the standard maps included in-game. Now, on to the 6th game, which also happens to have 6 in the title. Another game that I've been playing in co-op mode is Resident Evil 6. The aspect ratio is a little weird, but I think this is just how the game looks in split screen. Anyway, I actually played the prologue for this game a few years back, but I never touched it again after that. Why? Well, I've always loved the old school RE games up to the 4th entry, and most recently RE7 and the RE2 remake. If you're familiar with the Resident Evil games, then you probably know where I'm going with this. I didn't like the action-heavy focus of RE6. It made it feel like a completely different game from the series. As a co-op experience though, I think it was fun, at least as far as Leon's route is concerned, because that's the one that my friend and I played until the end. To give context to it, the game has 4 campaigns that you can take with different playable characters. When it comes to the story, I'm not entirely sure because I wasn't paying attention to it half of the time. Though from what I understood, there's a new virus strain spreading across the globe, so yeah, stronger zombies, shoot with guns. I love how the cutscenes feel like a B-movie, like I couldn't help but laugh at some scenes because of how absurd or cliche it was. Like, there was this one scene where Leon and Helena were literally climbing up from a plane's cargo ramp, up in the sky, using their bare hands. I didn't record it sadly, but this is just one of the many moments that was so over the top. As for the gameplay, it's straightforward. All you need to do is kill a bunch of zombies and other monsters. Sometimes you'll need to do really simple puzzles like putting statues in place to open a door. Other times you'll just need to kill waves of enemies before you can get to the next area. Leon's route actually gave me the most horror vibes, at least when I compared it to the other 2 campaigns that I played for like an hour or so. Like, even with my short playtime in Chris's route, I felt like his path was on a whole different level with non-stop action. And that's all I have to say about RE6. It was mindless fun for me, so I wasn't really concentrating on the mechanics too much. It's a fun co-op experience with a lot of silly scenes that just added to my enjoyment. Now for the final game I'll talk about, Hunt Showdown. This one's another game that I played with a friend. It's honestly the most interesting multiplayer game that I've played in recent memory, since it combines different genres into one game. So it's a survival horror monster hunter game mixed with battle royale that's both PvP and PvE. Basically, you play as a hunter and you'll be fighting against other players who are also hunting, and you need to kill or avoid various monsters along the way. It's kinda weird, but it works really well. The main goal in this mode is to search for clues using something called Dark Sight. After collecting clues, you'll be able to track down a boss that you'll need to kill, then exorcise. Once all of that is done, you can head out using one of the exits in the map. Or at least that's the ideal scenario. You'll be competing with other players in each match for the bounty, so there's a chance that someone will end up stealing it from you. There's a lot of smaller monsters along the way, too. Some are easier to kill than others, and you get rewarded with XP and money, but it gets riskier if you use bullets since you might need it to kill a boss or some other players. What makes things even more challenging is that everything creates noise. The game has proximity chat, so every other sound effect in the game has a volume to it. The most obvious ones are gunshots, but even the smallest sounds like stepping on a branch or running away can give away your position if another player happens to be close by. It makes for some really intense gameplay since you gotta focus on playing quick and quiet if you don't want to attract too much attention. Which is definitely the opposite of what I did in a lot of my matches. I don't know how many times I've triggered crows, barking dogs, and well, basically everything along the way. I did survive a lot of the matches by being carried, so yay? Oh yeah, that reminds me. After you reach level 10 or 11 in the game, you'll start losing your hunters if they die in a match. That includes their stuff too, so you'll be constantly hiring new characters to play and stock up on. It made me feel kinda sad when I lost my first hunter, but I got used to it real quick. There's a lot more to talk about for this game, but I'm just sticking to the general stuff for this video. If you guys haven't played Hunt Showdown, I highly recommend it. It always feels like you're constantly being watched by someone. It's really intense. Like, the game can go from being quiet and slow-paced to a heart-pumping showdown between you and another hunter. I remember being freaked out by the monsters in my first few hours, but later on, I realized that the other players are far scarier than any of the creatures in the game. And that's it. Let me know what you guys thought about the video. My voice is dying. I have a couple of scripts that I'm working on for my next few uploads, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to making even more progress with those and playing more stuff. I think I have more time now, so yeah. I hope you guys will look forward to that, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.